Some more continued with the blind trick spots that I was mentioning last time, if you recall, in regards to such things as the unrecognized distinction, the difference between the agreement to something, the agreement to do something, and then the actual execution of the deed. See if I can stretch some of those specifics into greater particulars. Oh, I know I can. Let's see if you can see me stretch them. That's what I meant to say. There has always got to be, there always will be, a city gap, a lag between what a man thinks, any man, and what he does. Now, I know you think I've talked about that before, but to stretch it out more specifically, or to stretch it out more in particular, there is a difference always, a city gap, a lag between what a man thinks and what he does, but also between what he thinks and feels, and then what he thinks, the difference between what he thinks he should which, if there was going to be some sort of contest, if it was a beauty contest or any kind of contest, I'm not even sure that I won't tell you. I'm not even sure I want to guess which one would win. Remember, if this was like a column is split in two, and this one I didn't write, of course, the first part, but this is split in two so that you would have walking down, let us say, the runway for man's approval, the ever beautiful, the bon amis, each coming out two by two. The first pair comes out and you can vote. It's the difference between what a man thinks and what he does. We can all imagine the judges, well, let's say the full audience. They're all looking, they're anticipating. A little applause for number one, what he thinks, and some more applause for what he does. Then the next level, the next group comes out, and it's the difference between, and they come out for your approval, the difference between what a man thinks and what he feels. You can see people, and they hold up for contestant number one, what a man thinks, again. Now this is separate from the first one now, between what he thinks and does. Now it's a new group, what he thinks and what he feels. And you go, and you can see people thinking, and the MC says, come on, you got to go, we got more coming. So then you got to applaud for one, then you got to applaud for the other. So they send those two out. But then, well, I say then, I'm already showing my prejudice, I guess, about which might win. But then the difference between what a man thinks, being contestant number one, and then what he thinks he should think, feel, and do. I would suggest, if the audience was hip and with it enough, that the smart money would probably go on this last batch. The difference between what a man thinks and what he thinks he should think, feel, and do. Within this whole scenario that I was going to spread out a little more, you could see that the whole story of human existence could be, I could call the whole story a story of G's, L's, and MP's. That the story of human existence is a story of gaps, lags, and missing pieces. Now, I made up the term, I guess, but I didn't make up the reality of this, as I'm about to show you. Because everyone knows this, but they don't look at it the right way. And they would have never thought to put them all together and see that it could have been a law firm of gaps, flags, and missing pieces. Or it could be the front three on some fifth dimensional front line in some unknown football or rugby league way off somewhere around the bend. There is a difference. That's why I put together these three partners in gaps, lags, and missing pieces. And I have in the past already talked about gaps between such things. I normally use the term I have in the past when I was describing such things as the difference between what a man thinks and then what he does. The difference between thinking of action and the difference in action, that there is a gap. And then in the last several weeks I have used the term, whether you notice or not, a lag. And I point out that there is a time lag. It's unrecognized, but it's always involved, and there's a way in which you can see so-called ignorance. People being, as they would think of it, being in the dark, being misled, making intellectual missteps of some kind. All forms of ignorance, all forms of not knowing can be seen as simply being a lag, that there is always a lag. You can also see this if it's possible that you might be able to see it, that even the difference I was describing as a gap between, for instance, what a man thinks, what he plans, and actually what he does, you can see that also as a lag. It is not synonymous, but it refers to the same situation wherein nothing would happen in the 3D world. Everything would be static. We would be in suspended animation, that they'd stop the film rolling on Star Trek when they shut some kind of beam, and of course everybody would go, and there you would be. Because there would be no action going on were there not a gap, were there not a lag. It's two different things between what a man plans, any man, what he thinks, and then what he does. If action was synonymous, if action and thinking was the same thing, hell, we'd all be hogs, and we'd all be in slop. I'm talking about slop with glitter on it. I'm talking about slop that's fur-lined, velvet encrusted. That's the kind of slop we'd be in. Also, now that would be if the gap was taken up. Now the time lag, if the time lag was done away with, then instantly whatever you thought about doing would be done. All right? If that happened, you wouldn't have time to do anything. Because everything you thought about, you'd be doing. And not just humans. Because the molecular, cellular situation in you is not that dissimilar from everything else in the 3D world. And so everything that life apparently was doing on non-human levels, as soon as it was thought about, it would be accomplished. There'd be no Christmas. There'd be no after-Christmas sales. There'd be nothing to look forward to because there would be no forward. It would all happen now. The 3D world would come to a standstill were it not for the gap. It would come to a standstill were it not for the lag in time. But now the one part of this, at least to me, intriguing sounding law firm, is missing pieces. You could look at, let me narrow it down what I started to say. You could look at the story of human existence. You could look at specifically, or a little more specifically, the story of human knowledge as being a matter of missing pieces. Because in the ordinary realm of human knowledge, if it's not a matter of missing pieces, it's of no consequence. Think about 1 second. Is there anything, let's narrow it down to you, you're specific enough. Is there anything that you know everything about? We're not going to worry about everything about from some so-called objective standard. Is there something, some area that you know everything about, enough to satisfy you? As far as you're concerned, you know all about it. That is all you will know. Think about it. Is there? Here's the answer. If there is, and there may be, if there is, what's the trick? The trick is you can't think about it. What it amounts to is you've forgotten it. It is no longer of any interest to you. The gap, the lag has been closed if in some area you know all you ever wanted to know. and that you now know it. Well, you had to know it in the time lag. That is, you did not suddenly know it just now. It's something that you already have known all you cared to know last week, last year. If so, and I ask you now, is there anything that you know, anything that you got some knowledge of, that is not subject to the scrutiny of these three devils, specifically Mr. Missing Pieces? Is there anything that you know about, as far as you're concerned, there are no missing pieces in your knowledge of it, some area? And if you try your best to think of it, and there is, let's say, you won't be able to think of it. You literally will not, because it will not move. It is like a vivus machina, it is like a piece of machinery that there is no tolerance, and it's frozen up. The fit is too perfect. As far as your nervous system, forget any sort of so-called objective reality. You know what I mean by that. Well, let's say the area is 17th century poetry. And at one time, for who knows why, maybe a holdover from rheumatic fever as a child, you developed some interest in 17th century poetry. And you read and read, and you stayed home from school, and you just did all kinds of stuff. And you saved your money, you bought books, and you joined clubs. And then one day it was like you had somebody that always thought, when I grow up, my parents never would let me, and I never could have all the pizza. When I get grown, no Corvette, no nothing. As soon as I get a job and pay my first month's rent and leave home, I'm going to get all the pizza in the world I want. Everybody's been through some of that, hadn't you? And eat pizza until you gag. All right? And never want pizza again, is the way the old story goes. Then somewhere along the way, let's go back to, not that I'm comparing gagging pizza to 17th century poetry, but let us say that you studied, you learned, and you read about 17th century poetry to the point that one day it was like you could not look another poet, much less from the 17th century, in the face. All the books you had, all the notebooks you had filled up, all the ersatz 17th century poetry that you tried to write, it was like it fell into a shoebox, and you hope it went down the great hole behind Alice into some netherland, and you just never wanted to see it again. Of course, what it amounted to was like you just suddenly, one day, lost all interest. That is a kind of freezing up. Now, I can look at it, I can describe it the other way, but you should be able to start jumping in your own opposite direction by now. But it would be as though all the missing pieces, in other words, your hunger is like a missing piece. If you're actually hungry for food right now, it is as though, if we spoke about your trying to isolate just your physical well-being, we could say that your stomach, your physical being, your continued health was missing a piece. It needed some additional food energy in the digestive system. It was like whatever it was in your nervous system that made you hunger after 17th century poetry, that it suddenly got filled, or finally got filled, and it's as though you have taken all the tolerance out of a machine and now it froze up. It was as though the missing piece, whatever it was, you thought it was an interest in 17th century poetry. There was simply a missing piece in the energy conversion in your nervous system, and it got to a place, it was like missing pieces, and that you filled them in, but it took days, weeks, months. And now, if I ask you, is there something that you know about, some area that you know about, and as far as you're concerned, your knowledge has no missing pieces, and you tried your best to go, you would never think of it. If there was an example like my 17th century poetry in your life, you literally, even after I told you the example, now so I try to think of something similar, and you tried to think, you couldn't think of it. Some of you might be good enough that you might say, well, now this doesn't sound right, but there was stuff that I got fooled around. I decided to take up guitar once, and I took lessons and fooled around with it and played and then forgot. But I'm not sure that's it, because you can't be sure. It is no longer a part of your ordinary experience. It is no longer a part of your ordinary knowledge. If there are not missing pieces in your knowledge at the ordinary level, then what you call your knowledge in the area is of no consequence whatsoever. Not in the revolutionary sense. Now back at the city level, it's just right. It's got to have missing pieces, or it doesn't exist. You could not think about it. You couldn't think about it to even argue with me. You couldn't think about it to try and bring up, well, listen, there's an exception in my life. You can't do it. It's one of my safer challenges, except they're all safe. You cannot think of anything that you know about that has no missing pieces, as far as you're concerned, and I'll take your word for it. What choice do I have? What choice do you have? What difference does it make? You cannot think of it. Anything you can think about that you know about has got missing pieces. That's the only reason you know about it. That's the only reason you can be conscious of it. This is, I have said this before, so I know that I'm somewhat covering myself, some of my older tracks, but this is another way that points to something larger that I can try and note for you people again, that you could try and get another view of the fact that anything that can be known is not worth knowing. It's simply not. Now we can say that, all right, there is no way to experience the beauty of Rome without going to Rome, but here I am leaving from Warsaw, and it's not the world's greatest drive, but along the way, perhaps we'll have a few laughs. I'll grant you that. So you can say, well, along the way, I may be having fun, and I have encouraged everybody. Anybody follow that? To expand your lateral interests and your hobbies and etc. But to say, all right, I know stuff right now that's worth knowing, you're wrong. In the city, you're not wrong. In the city, people can even mistake Warsaw or Krakow for Rome or Paris. But if you already know it, if it is known, it's not worth knowing. Because if it's known, it is subject to the ever-present influence of gaps, lags, and missing pieces. In this case, specifically missing pieces. Because that's the only way your nervous system can recall it. It's the only way it can retrieve it. It's the only way that your nervous system, in this case, the end that is called the human brain, seems to have any real knowledge of whatever it is we're talking about. That there has to be missing pieces. If not, you can't know about it. You got no knowledge of it. Therefore, what people normally talk about as knowledge, which they use as synonymous with intelligence, is always a process. It is always a work in progress, to use you Evotech people's, I won't say cheap defense, but you're not the only one that uses that. The whole world uses it. They just don't identify it. They just don't come right out and say it's a work in progress. At the ordinary level, what everybody knows is a work in progress. It is flawed. If it's not flawed, if it's not missing some part, it can't be known. The nervous system, it'd be like attempting to eat something larger than your mouth. It simply cannot be done. And you can think about it all you want to. You can think, well, there are things I know about that, as far as I'm concerned, it has no missing pieces. If you can think that, if you can't do it right now, do it when you get home tonight. If you can do that and think, well, no, you're not right. You were finally wrong, then I got to tell you, you're finally wrong. It's just one of the tricks. I guess life might say, if life had a friend somewhere, it might say it's one of the tricks of the trade that is done in the human nervous system. Regarding my reference to a new intelligence, everybody recalls my look-around method of pointing out that that is a very distinct, it is a open-ended method of just look around. Regarding a new intelligence, you should be able to see that the look-around method is not limited to, because what you should be doing is using the look-around method in the privacy of your own head. It's the same way that some of you, when I pushed it there for 2 or 3 days within a week's time about look around, and talked about it apparently quite simplistically in a physical sense, which there's nothing wrong with that, because everyone would be better off, revolutionary-wise, to look around. To be continually looking at life as being a joint, to continually be casing the joint. But not just physically, not just apparently in the external world, but you should be looking around and casing the joint continually inside your own head, which was a little piece of a trick if anybody willfully and continually attempted to practice looking around just in life, day in and day out. That you continue when you went into a room, when you walk from one room to another, when you walk from a building outside, when you walk from outside to inside, any possible excuse is to look around. Anything other than staring, anything other than looking where you wanted to look. The look around method, though, should be done at all costs inside your own brain, inside your own head. I guess I'm going to steal from Kyroots again. I'm going to finally catch up before he does this one. And it would have gone like this if I hadn't said it before he stole it. That local genius ain't much genius. Maybe I should leave stuff like that to him. Maybe he does it better. All right, being a local genius ain't being much. You don't like that? All right, how about headlines that you hear and see that says, "Local boy makes good"? Not so. Being a local genius ain't being much of a genius. If you're a local boy and you made good, you didn't really make good. Oh, all right. To be a genius, to be some form of a prodigy, is to be staring. If you're a genius in one area, you ain't much of a genius. Now in the city you're all right, because in the city that's all you can expect. In the city, in fact, that'll get your name on a marquee. That may keep you from having to actually get a decent job. But it's localized genius. It is local genius. A genius is a genius where? Now think, don't say New York. Don't say Carnegie Hall. A genius is a genius in one area. In the city, that's all it is. In the city, that's enough. As I said, in the city, now keep from having to go on welfare. Very likely. But being a genius in one area, now, from a more complex view, is not much of a genius. It just won't do. You cannot be a specialist intellectually. You could appear to be a genius. You could be, from a city view, an absolute genius in mathematics and music. But that is not much of a genius. It will not do. Now, the point is, the general vague point is, to give you breathing room, not to point out some flaw in the way life has wired up people, not to pick on the geniuses in the world, because some of them, especially in the arts, we all can enjoy as well as the next person. But internally, although I got almost no reaction when I started out saying that local genius is not much of a genius, even those of you, as far as I can tell, we're not suffering here, or we don't have the advantage, the privilege of having any real prodigies in the 3D sense in our group that I know about. Regardless of, now moving beyond some external display, some observable display of someone being a genius in some particular field, music, mathematics. Now beyond that, let's assume that that's not anybody's problem. Everyone is still wired up to try and be an operational genius. That is, everyone's nervous system that thinks about such things. Not everybody thinks about it in this way, but all of you people do. In general, anybody in this part of life's body, wherein the higher parts of the nervous system are the focal point. You think, without using these words, of being a local boy makes good. That is, internally in you is the belief that there is some area, which is a missing piece in you, you just don't see it that way, but there is some area in which I could and probably should excel. It is the unrecognized chasing of one's own folly from the revolutionist view. It would be any of you getting involved with this. Let us say that you are mutant enough before you met me, that just life already had you, that you were almost primed, that you might have gotten entangled with some of this, and then you run across something else beforehand, as normally people do. Like I said last time, you're coming out of a lecture or you're hanging around the funny section in the library, and a guy comes up and he says, I know what it is you want reading those books. And what it is you want the secrets that are only known by those people who live on planet X, and I'm in touch with them. And you go, wow, how did you know that? And of course he's standing there watching you pull up all these books on UFOs. But he says that and you go, wow. And you're done for. You got a new hobby. You have become, or you're attempting to become, local boy makes good. You're attempting to become a part of the local genius. That is, there seems to be a piece in you that is interested in some area, and then you spend the next part of your life, or the rest of your life, by and large, as far as this kind of interest was concerned, let's say, reading on UFOs or talking to the dead. And to you, you're becoming a local genius. You are pursuing your folly. It seems to be the missing piece. That is, you hear about it, or somebody tells you what you want to know is in such and such area, and you go, that feels right, that sounds right, I'll try it. But that seems to be the missing piece. You then apparently begin to fill in the missing piece. You apparently begin to know things in the ordinary sense, while not knowing the law that I've already pointed out, that anything in the city that can be known is not worth knowing. Nobody sees the devilish cleverness of this until I stop and say, nobody sees the devilish cleverness of how this is arranged. And then some people go, oh, yeah. Let me be sure that I did not overlook the possibility of making this very, very simple. There is built into everyone, you don't have to be interested in talking to the dead. You don't have to have ever had any extraordinary interest outside normal city activities before you got here. And yet I want you to see quite simply that everyone has built into them, or all of you hearing me and on tape, is the innate genetic feel, and then it of course comes out in what you think, that there is a specific area in which you should be excelling, or there is a specific area that you should be pursuing what modicum of talent you seem to have, or at least interest. That there is some specific area in which you should be toiling. And there's nothing wrong with that, except it won't do. If you stay there, there is no such thing. There is no real genius in being a local genius. There is no real genius in being a prodigy. If you're a local boy who made good, and you're indeed were a local boy, that is, you're still in the city, you didn't actually make good. In the city you may have. But those who actually are a local boy makes good, sometimes when Satre or someone slips up on him when it's a dark and cold night and he says, right at midnight, no, a little after midnight, and the guy's half drunk, sleeping alone. He says, you're a local boy that made good, he says to himself, and he says, yeah, big fucking deal. And those good French philosophers, the first part of this century, they stand around his bed and go, we could have told you, at any rate. The nervous system, as it's supposed to be at the ordinary level, is not satisfied. It is not satisfied if your local boy makes good. You know, famous people, successful people, I hate to say this, but Jesus, they're not that much happier than unfamous people. I think somebody's pointed that out to humanity before. The chances are somebody didn't know what they were talking about. But they're not that much happier. But as I think you might guess, or some of you had a cynical turn of mind, you might say, well, that may be, but at least they can be not any more happier in better places. And, you know, in the summer on the Riviera, in the winter somewhere else. There's nothing to be said in the revolutionary sense about being a local genius. I'm not sure that tonight is the time to try to make you see any further with this specifically, the way it feels. But you can find in yourself individually that you have always believed. And it is subject to change. At least you look for just one unalterable goal, idea, area that you thought about, because it very likely shifted sometime after you got entangled with this. And you thought, this is it. But then the feeling is that there is some one area, maybe your nervous system, maybe your brain says, I can fairly, in a manner acceptable to me, I can fairly well define it, what it is I believe that I'm after. Or it may be pretty vague. But there is still the feeling that I'm trying to get you to recognize that everyone is destined, everyone's got to be, everyone should be a genius. But remember, a genius is localized. A genius is specialization in one area, and that will not do for this. Because outside the city, a local genius ain't much of a genius, is what I'm saying. He may be able to play the violin enough to make even revolutionists want to sit down, take a break, and bring tears to their eyes. Now I may join them and applaud the man. But that's it. A local genius ain't much of a genius. Being a specialist in this won't do, because there's nothing to specialize in. Yeah, but you got to start somewhere. Yeah, I'll grant you that. Except what you should say is, you got to believe, you got to think you're starting somewhere. And then I'd have to say, yeah, now we're getting somewhere. And then you'd say, well, what'd I just say? I don't even know what I said. You got to think that there's somewhere to start. Or else nobody would start, right? That seems clear enough. But also remember, I've already pointed out, if you think also that, well, I know where to start. Always remember this, if it's known, it wasn't worth knowing. You were just lucky. You were just lucky that what you knew didn't hurt you. You were just lucky that what was known was not enough baggage that it tripped you up. But to believe that it helped you, give us a break. I know this gets sticky, but I get here sometimes I can't help throwing out 2 or 3 little additional helpings of that kind of pudding. That there is just... Still rolling? That there is nothing that a person can know in the ordinary sense that's of any benefit in regards to this. Are you still operating?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, let's move on to a completely different area before we break something else in here. Do any of you happen to know this? Here's a good old city fact. This is true. For once, I'm not going to make up whatever I'm going to tell you. When I say here's something I read in history or physics, some principle and I put a foreign guy's name on it and I just made it up. Especially the history. That's the easiest because nobody knows all the history. All I got to do is say, well, here's something happened around 1430 or 1440. And I just make it up. Nobody knows. But at any rate, I just made that up now. I just said that to be funny. Here's something that's really true, and it's more, of course, the reason I'm being serious now because we're getting to serious areas. Science and history doesn't mean much, but now I was getting the world of psychiatry. So, there is a limit to, I guess, what should be one's munificence with illusion, and I think we reached this point. So I just wanted to assure you that now that I'm going to talk about something to start off with in psychiatry, that this is true. I'm not just making this up. Here it is. Do you know this? That if you put what you consider ordinary people, sane people, if you put a person in an insane asylum unjustifiably, you understand? If you put a person in an insane asylum, they will soon, notice I didn't say real quickly because I gave you a chance, they will soon become a proper ordinary inmate. Does everybody know that? If you think that's not true, you're in the running to be there anyway. Well, not necessarily that. You're in the running for dumb poster child of the year. Any of you, if you didn't know that, through some quirk, that they put you in an active, full-blown, insane asylum, very soon, I was just going to say soon. Soon. Now imagine all the stuff you'd go through to start with. This is a mistake, I don't belong here, which you'd be surprised that you'd think, I'm in a canyon, because all around you would be like echoes, and you realize half the people here saying that. And you think that only happened in movies about people in jail all saying, what are you in for? Well, murder, but I don't belong here, I'm innocent. That ain't the only place that happens. You would soon be a proper and an ordinary inmate. That is the truth. You would have to be just very, very exceptional. I'm telling you what is a true fact at the city level. You stick a person in an insane asylum and soon. Okay, we've had several minutes with this. Real soon. It would surprise you how soon you would begin to be, let's call it you, that you're there, going through the same routine. You're just there with them. Now, nothing else done. They don't have to do anything to you now. No drugs, no nothing. But you are there and you are treated as one of them very soon. You hear me? Very soon, you'd be one of them. You would be a proper, functioning, and ordinary inmate of that asylum. Now, CF that to life in the city. You got to turn the tape over. Are you going to get me? Oh, you aren't? My God, I guess I deserved it. Well, in case you people didn't know, she just started a week or so ago. No soliciting, she began to hand me one. And I never asked. And now I ask. There's life for you. There's justice. After all that, I asked. And for the first time once I asked, the answer is no. It's a good thing I don't believe in live and learn. Remember where we were, don't you? If you were in an insane asylum, unjustifiably so, very soon you'd belong there. Very soon you would be one of them. I can't believe that any of you, just use your little imagination the way even most people can. I can't believe that any of you seriously doubt that. I don't mean you can hold on to that for very long, but I assure you that's exactly what would happen. Now, as I said, CF, compare that with living in the city. Also, and not just, I don't mean this in some, of course, pejorative sense that the city, ordinary life, is an insane asylum. It's not my place to make such comments. It's not part of my job duties. But there is the feeling in many, many people that they don't really belong where they are in life, or that they don't belong in life. Many, many people feel that way. Wouldn't you agree? Just find out how many people believe in God. Find out how many people believe in some kind of religion, if for nothing else. And all those people feel like they're in the wrong place. There is a sense in which it is not improper to say that many, 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 many people think that they feel that they are in a locale, such as an insane asylum, but they are in a location in which they are, at least temporarily, captive, and that they do not belong there. That if this is the nature of life, I mean, if this is, I'm in the wrong wing of the building, they got me in the wrong company. If this is indeed an army, I'm in the wrong platoon. If this is indeed some sort of business, I'm not in my department. If this is indeed some sort of school, they got me in the wrong grade. They got me in the wrong class. That I do not belong exactly where I am. My uniform does not fit exactly. I'm just not at ease. This is not exactly where I belong. And the same way, as I was trying to assure you, if you didn't follow it, if you were indeed, now back to a literal example, in an insane asylum, you do, surely, don't you, ask rhetorically, you understand that as far as the people there are concerned, that on the surface, that you are there, somebody's turned you into them, they hand you the chart or something, and they put you in there and they lock the door, and you turn to the first person that seems to be a non-inmate, and you say, listen, I don't belong here. You do understand that's futile, don't you? That was why I was saying about you think it's an echo, because you find that everybody in there almost is not catatonic when they brought them in. As soon as they close the door, they say, hey, I don't belong here, let me out of here. So they've heard that all before. That is the first thing that many, many people feel, or say that they feel, and think that they feel about life by the time that they get old enough that they're doing things other than wetting their pants and playing in sandboxes. Is that I'm not sure I belong. Many kids have this story that they say, I believe I'm adopted, when there's no basis for it. I believe I must have been left by gypsies. Of course, gypsy children, I don't know what the hell they say. I must have been dropped off by a band of traveling wasps that came through here in a caravan of BMWs or something. But I start out with the insane asylum because I thought that would be kind of a piercing example, because the places, they're almost worse than jail, for those of you who don't know about it, the way they operate in general. That is, it is probably as easy to get out of jail when you have been unjustly convicted and put away, sentenced and the whole thing carried out. It's about as easy to undo that process as it is to find yourself put away in a mental hospital, because to get out of jail, there is some possibility, let's assume that you are innocent, in the same way that they put you in an insane asylum and you're innocent of being insane, but you've been put away through some horizontal, through some city determination that you broke a law. There is some possibility that you can produce evidence showing that you are not guilty. Well, what kind of evidence can you show to show that you are not insane? And there's almost none. Once you have fallen into that piece of machinery, it's not an attack on the world of psychiatry and etc. You're supposed to know that. It is the way life is arranged. Saying that you're not insane, saying that you don't belong there, you would find out. I guess after a couple of days, your voice would be hoarse and you'd be mad. Most people, or it's very likely, you'd end up attacking somebody after a day or so. Why won't you listen to me? And of course, there's further proof that you don't belong on the street. You don't just jump up and attack somebody. So then they put you not only in that ward, they put you in isolation somewhere. They pack you up in ice cubes until you calm down. And they'll let you back in the general insane population on what basis? That you quit causing trouble. And what's the way you cause trouble? By saying I don't belong here. And so you find out, well, if they're not going to just whip me into some kind of terrible shape, if they're not going to actually drive me insane, one thing I got to do is quit saying I don't belong here. Because every time I do that, they want to put me in shock treatments, or give me medication, or pack me in ice, or hang me by my thumbs. So, now back to people in the city. Now back to ordinary life. Think back. Of all the ways, and its varying degrees, it doesn't have to be something that was an explosive situation or an explosive series of situations in your life of you rebelling against your family or absolutely insisting insanely that you were left by a bunch of drug-crazed Romanians and that you're not actually the son of these people, but just a general feeling that I don't belong here. I'm in the wrong ward if all of life's a hospital, as I said. I'm in the wrong department if this life is a business. But notice, along the line, you quit saying anything about it. Think about it a second. And I would dare say that none of you could ever think back that there was some specific area, such as, and back to my insane asylum metonymus picture, that like in there might have been a time that the third time that they packed you in ice and gave you some kind of medication might be the time that you thought, all right, I got it. I got to do something else because I can't keep telling them that I don't belong here because they keep doing this to me. So I got to find some other way. So there might have been almost a moment of bedlam and epiphany, we might say, that you went, all right, I can't say that anymore. I got to find some other way to handle this. But out in life, what I'm suggesting, that I doubt that any of you had some point that like you kept bugging everybody wanting to know what's the nature of life, what's the nature of life, and you asked your mother and your father kept saying, hush, hush, don't bug me, don't bug me. And you kept saying, well, does it bother me asking you? And he'd say, no, how else will you learn, but shut up. And that you kept on and you went from priests to rabbis to philosophers to teachers. I doubt if there was in anybody's life some moment of that kind of apparent awakening to where you went to the priest at your local parish for the 15th time saying, what's the nature of life? And he went, Jesus, I've had enough. And he took a shoe and he beat the crap out of you. And then you thought, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't be asking that question. I doubt that that was the course of your life, but somewhere along the way, you did quit asking. You did quit bugging people. Now let's jump back again to my opening part of this paragraph. Those unjustifiably put in an insane asylum soon become proper ordinary inmates. Now back to where we were, me just talking about ordinary life and saying to CF it. You soon become a proper ordinary cityite. And yet from one view, I am agreeing you did not belong there. You were unjustifiably put in the ward of the city. You were put in an insane asylum. You were put in a location called ordinary life, and you didn't belong there. But there's nobody to talk to. There's nothing you can say, and if indeed you do keep trying to say it, you're in for trouble. They're going to pack your ass in ice. They're going to give you medications. They're going to give you shock treatment. They're going to slap you around. The rest they're just going to put down, man should never be released. Incurable case. Which is bad. It's probably worse than being slapped around or being given drugs, because some of them drugs probably ain't bad. But I mean, just for the weekend. But you keep on saying, I don't belong here, I don't belong here, and they give you shocks, and you say, I still don't belong here, and they pack you nice, and you say, I don't belong here, and they give you medication, and you come out and you say, I don't belong here. They may finally just sit down and say, what are we going to do with those so-and-so? And they say, well, we've run out of the known options right now of medical science, but there's one thing I think we can all agree, and the board goes, yes, is we can't ever turn that sucker loose. We've had no success. Everything we've done has had no success with him, right? Right. Which of course is total success because they get to keep you. And psychiatry rolls along. The situation is the same. You quit asking. And I was trying to give all you people, and getting this tape, we'll assume that you unjustifiably was left in on somebody's doorstep in the city. And for years, or as soon as you were adult-style conscious in the city, that is, like in the insane asylum, as soon as you realized where you were, as soon as you shook the bars and you realized this ain't made out of blown sugar, and you checked the door, and sure enough, and they locked it and walked off, that this is for real. They've got me here. And you find there's nobody to talk to. You say, I don't belong here. How did I get out? Where did I go? And you find out that you are surrounded by Philistines. Some of them with MD degrees. Those that don't have degrees got real big biceps and thighs. And they got the key back to the shock machine. You find out very soon that there's nobody to talk to. So we can say that you were unjustifiably left in this insane asylum of the city. But notice, you soon become an upstanding, rule-abiding, proper inmate. You got no choice. Since I will assume that many of you, I can feel here in person that many of you believe that you do catch a not too indistinct metaphorical drift to all this, then let me ask you this though. How about everybody else in the world? If we say, or if I was saying for you, that in a sense I could say that anybody who it is ultimately determined is actually born into this, that this is your own, this is it. You just got no choice, there's none to talk about. It's back to the story of on the desert of how much do you charge for water. The guy says, does it matter? If you're here, does it matter? If it reaches that point, then we can truly say that you fit into the story I made up. That in a sense you were unjustly born into the city, into an insane asylum. But now, other than you people, other than anybody that truly was born in the wrong place, left on the doorstep, in the wrong department, wrong part of the planet. Other than that, try and use your intelligence right now and think, how about everybody else? Is that true for them? Because the rest of life is dissatisfied. Everybody else does feel as though that they are to varying degrees the wrong person in the wrong place, that they're in a way almost estranged from their native home, even their family. But just the thing of being dissatisfied. Is it the same? What can you do with that piece of information, though? I believe for tonight I'm about to move from this area, but I would point out one that might prove very simply, very directly beneficial. Is one thing that you should be aware of is don't ever, whenever possible, but don't ever, whenever possible, but don't ever, whenever possible, try not to find your fate, much less your fat, in the hands of Philistines. They've got keys to doors. That is, don't be insane in the city. Don't be nuts around those big old people with big thighs and arms that are in charge, that they're the head hog holders. The ones that have to hold up the hogs to eat the acorns off the trees because they may mistake you for a loose bag of acorns. And if they ever do, you're going to have your hands full getting out of that tree. That is, getting out of that asylum. for you to try to tell down the hog holder. Everybody knows what a hog holder is. That you're going to be some of the nuts in the tree, and some of that hog holder's got hold of you, and you keep saying, "You can put me down now." And he says, "Yeah, right. You got the wrong person. I'm not actually. I don't belong here." Gotcha. Yeah. Well, did that seem too weird? How about all the times I've tried to tell you? I didn't try. Sometimes I just told you directly that a revolutionist, somebody doing this, had got no business whatsoever being in debt. And now I'd say, "Hey, I mean debt, real debt." And then I'd say, "Okay, hey, okay. I don't mean just real debt. You should not be in debt." Well, how about me having Kyroots say things like, "Listen, anybody wants you to listen to them, don't. Anything that you can have in the city, not worth having." If none of this begins to make permeating sense to you, if none of this becomes like water, and at times when it's not water it becomes fish and you become the water, then I'm not sure you're listening to all this. What is there that a person... All right, let me make that an excursion. How much time we got? Well, I'm trying to decide whether to make this a private excursion for you people on tape or let everybody in the world hear it. I'll just go ahead and put it on the tape. And then you people getting this on tape that would normally cut off the tape for a private utilizing excursion, consider it that. Let me ask you, what would a person, and after person, you can write it down if you're writing it down, or write it down in your brain if you're brain writing it. What would a person, parentheses, what would a person, slash, what would a person, comma, parentheses, are a revolutionist, parentheses, comma. What does a person actually possess besides what you know? Now you can try that thinking about yourself at the ordinary level. Nothing all that mystical, but just your ordinary life. What seems to get you through the day and through the night, through the kinds of things that you have to do in life, apparently. Such as all of us apparently have to do some kind of work. You have to apparently pay taxes. You have to apparently go certain places at certain times. All just the ordinary world, city life. Even in that context, which is you and everybody else, that part of you that is similar and locked into the same ward, if not total hospital, as everybody else. That is, from line level consciousness down, that which you have in common with everybody else. Even at that level, what is it that you possess other than what you know? Your own intelligence. But now there is another way to change, to expand the neuralization, to expand the potential of the question, is now take it outside the city limits. Let's think about as best you can about what would seem to be even an extraordinary possibility, or extraordinary possibilities of whatever it is that I mean behind the words revolutionist, new intelligence. Even on that basis, outside the city, outside your ordinary fields of interest, still the question, what is it that you actually possess besides what you know? Besides your intelligence, what do you possess? And this is not some flim-flam, ersatz, spiritual question of saying, yes, you may own a Maserati, but do you actually own it? Well, if you own it, you own it, right? If it's paid for. Or if you moved out of state and the bank can't find you and you've still got it, you can say it's paid for. But my question, it's not metaphysical. What do you actually possess? What can you possess besides what you know? What you do? your health, what you feel. The question itself should be a dead giveaway, at least from my intention, for me to say, what do you possibly possess other than what you know? Your intelligence, not your feelings, not your health. What do you personally, not you collectively, not you as a part of a tribe, as a part of a community, a religion, even a family, but you, what do you possess other than your intelligence? What is yours? Yours, the bundle of cells, those talking molecules that seem to be you. What do you possess other than your intelligence? Then look what the hell you do with it. Now strike that last part. I was going to leave on a different tone. It was like probably some of you with a musical ear that I suddenly went into a minor key, or at least left on a dissonant chord. Almost as though hearing that Merle Haggard's playing a bar mitzvah. Well, let's don't think about that any further. Unless we heard, I guess, that Ixot Perlman was playing up the rat's nest in Snellville. Well, until next time, keep those cards and letters coming in. All my television parishioners, and remember this, no matter what you read in those trashy magazines at the supermarket, I didn't do that. I didn't. I give you my word. That was my evil twin brother they got the photograph of. I wasn't there.